thing I wanted to touch on briefly, even though we're in great economic times as we sit here, at least in America, that's what we're told and what the statistics bear out. Uh, Downturns come. It's a function.
Hmm.
It's always in motion, in my opinion,
Hmm.
up and down, or as my dad used to say, like a clock, back and forth, back and forth. Right now we're in an upturn, but downturns come. Can we just touch on briefly what lessons should we learn carrying forward and remembering so when the next one comes, as a small business owners, what are some of the key things we need to remember from the downturns of the recent past?
That they're always going to keep coming back and that the worst of times bring out the best. One thing you could look at in Hurricane Harvey is that people came together, they supported each other, not just from a community nonprofit perspective, but from a business perspective. A lot of businesses helped and mentored other businesses. And it would be nice, it's like every year when it's Christmas, we say, why can't it be Christmas every day? Uh, we say about the economic downturns, why can't we look at each other as a community of businesses rather than a bunch of competitors that we're out to get? That's one thing we need to think about. As I said, the next actual recession is coming in about another 5 years. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the 2008, 2009 because of, at least the economists will say that it's not as bad because a lot of safeguards are in place for communities of businesses to help and support each other. If I had to wave a magic wand, I'd like to give some hero awards to local businesses for thinking of each other as a business community. I think it's wonderful when people get active in chambers of commerce and networking groups. We were in a position before events of a couple of years ago where a lot of chambers and networking groups um, membership was shrinking. I'm not talking about Conroe, I'm talking about other areas. And what happened as a result of people rolling up their sleeves and seeing each other more as a community of businesses, that people started getting re-involved with business networking groups, re-involved with chambers of commerce. I think that one of the best investments people in business can make is to occasionally reach out your hand and help someone else. None of us are in business to give all of our time and resources away, but when we do, we want to make it count. I would love, I've recommended to small businesses to have a little spot in the bottom right-hand corner of their website to pay tribute to their shareholders, to their stakeholders, to their communities. When they do things in the community, it's not bragging if you've really done the good guy work. People like to do business with people they trust.
Well, and I think, yes, and that's an important point you make because of building that trust through the community. But back to what you said, I want to make sure people picked up on that because the idea that you build your place in the community now so that when the downturn occurs, you are connected through a chamber of commerce, through other groups, through other businesses, so you can work with each other and help each other through those times. Well, let me ask you this. It's kind of changed direction a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Businesses go bad. I mean, the business, and we've talked about some of the causes of that today. What are some other reasons that businesses just go bad?
There are about 17 to 20 of them. A lot of times you can line them up with those elements of the business tree. They're in the wrong business at the wrong time for the wrong reason. They're underfinanced. They don't have the plant resources and management. Their technology is way beyond out of date. Technology is a term that a lot of us embrace. We love it. But technology by itself does not transform business. It's what we do with it. Same thing with training and leadership and those other wonderful programs that unfortunately businesses cut. One of the other reasons that really makes companies go bad is when they start making systematic cuts in the budget without understanding what they're cutting. What do they cut the most often? Branch 4, people. Should be 28% of their emphasis in their business, but what do they cut? They cut the training. They cut the benefits. They cut all the stuff that keeps people loyal to the company. in the current economic environment and low unemployment that we are enjoying in this country right now, good employees that are going to be loyal to Company X and Company Y and the others are getting fewer and further between. So it's what you do to make the situation where they wouldn't even consider going to work elsewhere. You know, I mean, research will tell you that, or at least it told me that companies whose employees are occasionally allowed to take off work and participate in chamber activities, and that is work. That's part of work. People say, oh, you know, going off and being in a charity fun run on the weekend, that's not work. Yes, it is. It helps you represent your company. Companies that have employees that are allowed to do those things, their productivity and their loyalty, according to Harvard Business School, increases 2 to 3 times. So what's wrong with giving them a little latitude? Bigger corporations, and I've set up what we call heir apparent programs for mid-managers who will then be aspiring going into the top leadership. In the heir apparent program, you make assignments of which charity you're going to work with, how you're going to be visible in the community. I had a client years ago, some people may have heard of, called Texas Commerce Bank, and their chairman, Ben Love, was a friend of mine. And he came to me one time and he said, there's this guy on my staff and he's going to be running the show someday. Would you kind of meet with him and mentor him? And his gift to Mark Shapiro was having me there mentor him. And one of the first comments I said was, we need to differentiate you in the community from Ben Love. He's the champion of the arts and education. You need to be the champion of inner city revitalization and this, that, and the other. And I wrote his first 3 or 4 speeches that addressed those issues. He grew into the role, and now he's vice chairman of the board of Chase Bank. I'd say he's done pretty well. But it's because you saw these strategic resources in the company to be the heroes and pave the way for the other people. Whereas going back to the crises, when the wrong things are done and people see bad behaviors, that kind of gives them permission to be bad also. You know, we all do what we're modeled. We all aspire to be what our mentors told us or didn't tell us. It's better to tell people the positive stuff. And that's the reason why you do this, is to cut the losses. You're trying to keep those 6 coins from stacking up. High cost of doing nothing, by the way, is an average that businesses will spend an average of 6 times more every year cleaning up problems. Now, if you did a lot of these other things, you keep those coins from stacking up. That's what you're trying to do. It has to do with cost savings, time, market share. You know, you're just looking for ways to be a better company. And a better company is going to be more profitable and more creative.
Which to me defines success. You know, so people listening don't think this is all about the big corporations, and Hank uses these corporations. Yes, he's addressing their issues, but many times, and I've been able to do this myself for myself and my clients, take what happens in a big company and bring it down and look at your own small company. Quick story. This past Friday, I'm in a barbershop. Guy who cuts my hair is the owner, and he's got 3 other people working for him. They were getting ready to close the shop at the end of the day and go to a community event together. And he made a comment, and he said, man, I'm tired. I don't want to, you know, this and that. He was telling me, you know, about it was for raising money for a baseball team, little league team or something. And one of the other barbers, a lady, she overheard what he said. He says, wait a minute, you need to get up for this. This is a company event. And he says, well, I wondered, y'all are getting all fixed up, you know, doing their hair and everything because everybody had left but me. And she reiterated, she says, no, I represent the company. And I'm going to this dinner. It was a dinner and an auction. And he had bought a table and took the people to work with him.
And she's now 3 times better a barber and seen as such by the customers, to where she wouldn't consider going somewhere else. And you know that barber and beauty shops are constantly recruiting people with books of business, the same way law firms and accounting firms create additional revenue stream by going after people that are known from other companies. It's just we in business want to do work that we're proud of. That's the other issue. One of my other chapters in the books covers the 20 things that people do, why people work, why they do good work. And money and getting paid for your time is only one of the 20. The rest have to do with pride and workmanship, association with a company that occasionally does good guy things in the community. Again, none of us are in business to give it all away, but when we do, we want to make it count. And what do we really give away most of the time? Our valuable time and our expertise. You know, I used to serve on boards of nonprofits anymore. I don't do that anymore. I go and speak to and advise those boards so they'll realize how to be better board members. You know, we've all got talents. We all give talents. And as you know, the last time I was on the show a couple of years ago talking about my book, Nonprofit Legends, you know, nonprofits often, and what they do, become the face of the company. Certain companies get associated with certain causes, and it's the art and the skill with which they turn it into business. There are people in the business community, small businesses in the greater Houston area, whose business is benefited because they were so visible during Hurricane Harvey, helping neighbors who turned into customers.
Right, and there's a certain element of sincerity in that you have to produce when you do that. But my story about the barbershop, I don't want anybody listening to this video cast, live presentation, and to discount the fact that your business is too small. That in this case, the working owner, 3 employees, and one of those employees in particular spoke out and said, I care. I am going to be representing the company at this event. So it is important. If you have one employee, particularly one or more, make sure that you've got them right, the right person, the right job, all the things we've talked about today, because it does pay off, because they are a public face of your company in particular situations. So let's talk about, Hank, if we can, you talk about change, and we talked about it early on in our first of the series, and how people in general, of course, you and I agree, we don't know the psychological, but people object to change. But I have a business, and I want to grow that business, which means I have to have change. That's just built in. No way to do it otherwise. How can I, as a small business person, how would you recommend that I manage change in the most effective way?
For one thing, you have a part of your plan that deals with the changes. You know, what a company, one of the biggest problems that a lot of companies have is they're changing too fast. Situations out there are changing too fast, out of their control. You need to be able to manage. Research tells us that 66.7% of companies cannot grow any further than they are now. And so unbridled change for the sake of growth, you know, you look at companies that have, you know, they've merged with someone else, and maybe the merger didn't work out, and maybe it was time to spin off. And sometimes you've got to be prepared to change. I worked with some companies that were better off as part of a roll-up than they were working together. I had a lot of friends who, during a certain period of time, they're in an industry called analytical instruments. You know, every chemical plant is guided by analytical instruments. And what started happening was chemists who were on staff were creating these technologies, and next thing you know, they were in businesses to provide those to companies that they had retired from working at. And then at some point, we had to realize, and I had to help make them realize, that their business was no longer making tubes and boxes. It was becoming a consulting organization. And I said to these people, they were chemists of the old school, oh, we're scientists and we tell people how to utilize our technology. I said, no, they're going to respect you more if you charge them how to do it. I don't think Arthur Andersen gives their work away for free. I don't think that, some of these technology groups, I had been involved with Hewlett Packard in creating their technology arm. And then it got spun off into its own thing. People just need to realize that the growth that you're enjoying is not going to last. It's going to change. And it may get to where it's too much growth and you've got to know when to back off, when to, certain mergers aren't going to work, or occasionally what products to spin off. One of those analytical companies, we had to realize that we had to split our products into different companies. The ones that had to do with oil and gas and liquefaction and all of that became one company, and then everything that had to do with water and downstream flow of all that then became a separate thing. And and it all started because I said, you guys are too complicated and too big. It's now time to break into smaller companies. And they were kind of relieved getting that advice, and these were not large corporations. A lot of them were mom and pop type companies, and it was a relief knowing that maybe it was time to try something different. The change was happening whether they wanted it or not.
Right.
And part of the change was them being too big, needing to get smaller.
Yeah, and I can imagine that is a major, major change, so to speak. One of the things you talk about in your books, and you and I have talked about, is customer service. And of course, that topic gets kicked around in almost every business meeting, or not business, but I mean in any kind of business group where business people are just discussing their business. It's always a complaint about can't find people to deliver the service, whatever. It's at an all-time low. How can it be reinfused back into business? How can we truly change our customer service other than complaining about it?
Well, is for one thing to take the focus away from, oh, that's so-and-so down the hall. That's their job to do that. Those kids that are sitting there on those phone lines, they're at that call center, that's their job. No, there needs to be a customer focus, customer service mentality in everybody's job description. I would like to see, and I've written about that in the books too. By the way, I mean, there's a formula to these books. There's something about each of these topics in each book. And, whereas some people only write about one of those topics in their book, I'm trying to write about them from the big picture perspective. In my professional opinion, customer service in our society is an all-time low, and it's getting worse. And part of it is because there's a presumption that somebody down the hall, that's their problem, that's their issue. I think that every employee of a small business needs to have their own strategic plan. And if their job description talks about, I will be more successful when I have contributed to the customer status of our company, I will be successful. And then they will talk in the job description. I advocate what's called a performance review-oriented description. It's not one I thought up. It's some very smart HR people have thought it up. But it basically ties every decision to a customer outcome. The current management philosophy in business, the problem with a lot of people in business is there are usually two management styles behind. Some of the larger corporations are still living in the captain of industry style of business, which went out of style. That management style went out in the 1920s. The current management style is called customer-focused management. There's a chapter about that in the book. And it takes the premise that every management decision needs to be tied to a customer outcome, so that no longer is customer service dial and smile down the hall or something that we farm out to India. It's something that every business decision factors in. And you start talking about customer outcomes with a company. What about companies that we're trying to acquire or team with? What about everybody in our supply chain? You know, in total quality management, we talk about the seamlessness of the business offering and the experience, meaning that every supplier and vendor who works with you should be on the same page. I just recently spoke back in March, and I was the opening keynote at the International Total Quality Management Conference. And this year it was held in San Antonio. And what the message was, quality is not just something that's role and function. It's not just something where you look at numbers and judge productivity based on somebody's metrics. It's how did those people come to refer business back to you? How did you get people? Everyone wants likes on the internet. Everyone wants recognition. What are you doing to get those reviews symbolically as part of your corporate culture? And the more you think about it and plan about it, you're gonna do that. You know who I think does that probably very well is the nonprofit community. I wrote about that when I did that book. I think, and I said when I was talking about that subject on the show a couple of years ago, if small businesses would be more nonprofit-esque and nonprofits would be more business-like, and that there was somehow a marrying of the two, it would be unbeatable. And meaning that small business has a heart and soul of doing well. We have, one of the things that Silver Fox is that we've done is we've judged in that Better Business Bureau Awards program. And I've judged about 30 different awards programs for different organizations over the years, including the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award. And I find as a judge, and I know that you've judged those entries before, every time you read one, you learn something. Every time you learn something, it gives you an educational idea that you can impart to a client. Sometimes we teach people what we've most recently learned. You know, your best ideas come from something you just learned, and you just can't wait to teach it to other people. I learned that when I was 12 years old, and the person I learned it from was Eleanor Roosevelt. You teach people what you most recently learned. But when you think of the broader issue of customer service, how it's the umbrella to everything. It's part of the big picture of business. It's not just a subset of branch 5, business development. And you think of it that, then you think of all the other parts, components. You can't have good customer service without having good products, good logistics, good follow through. I was involved with a group. You know, I give these case studies. Obviously, I don't talk about the bad ones that don't listen to me. But I was working with a group of trucking companies, and they were part of a national association. With the explosion of the internet and just-in-time deliveries and all of that, someone has to deliver all those packages. They're not all delivered by drones, and they're not all delivered by Amazon. So the importance is all of those local trucking and logistics companies started putting their resources together. And how can we be better at delivering what we're doing? I was conducting a management retreat for them down in Atlanta, Georgia, and I gave them this barrage of suggestions. Why are we surprised of that? And one of the things I said was, why can't anybody go on your website and get pricing? If I can go on a utility company's website and get comparisons of rates, you know, for electricity, why can't you tell people what it costs to ship packages? Your competitors can, USPS can, Amazon can. Why can't you? Oh, we never thought of it. That's customer-focused management. And then we did more research and found out that customers had been begging them just because some guy shows up for a seminar And as helping them with ideas, I later found out that other people had made the same suggestions. No one listened to them. So those are those issues. Customer-focused management is not just a management style, it's a mantra.
Well, we're winding down in this series.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the time you've devoted to us and
Yeah.
really carried us from soup to nuts.
OneBestConsult.com, a community of small business owners where you as an owner can find answers to the most pressing business questions you have. Not sure who to turn to when you have a challenge in your business? Turn to the folks at OneBestConsult.com. That's the number one, bestconsult.com, where you can always find advice you can use based on common sense business experience. Join our community of like-minded business owners at OneBestConsult.com.